all this. So I think that's the first trait that she wants to see, somebody who can spot threats in their environment and how to avoid being toxic with them and not just be somebody who's totally jealous and insecure and just spot all the threats. And is that you also offer lots of love and care at the same time. You're not just being controlling and worried about threats, but you're also being worried about, did you get home okay? Do you want me to pick you up? Or what time do you land? I'll come and get you from the airport. They want to show that you're protected in general. If you're just being protected when it comes to another man, but then you don't care about whether I'm struggling, if I'm not struggling, if I'm upset, I'm sad, you don't care about all those things, then we think you're a toxic. But when you are overall a protector, we love that. Yeah, so it's an extension of your natural protective instinct. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is your emotional regulation. We as women are very chaotic. We can be sad, happy, depending on our period. Where emotions are all over the place. But when we have a man who can control his emotions, and what we mean by emotions, you still have them. You still have them all the time, but they're not disproportionate to the situation. So you'll get angry when something's angry, but you don't go wild with anger. You'll get sad when something is sad, but you're not hysterical and no one can console you. You have an amount, you can experience emotions, but you regulate them back to normal after a short period of time. So we're looking for emotional regulation as well. We like that. And the other thing is just consideration. I would say that consideration is an important one. Just knowing that you understand and try and understand her feelings and take into account what she's saying to you, as long as it's reasonable and as long as it's productive for the relationship, not just her, that we like. So manipulation is when she's asking for things that only benefit her, but not the relationship. But compromise and consideration is when she's asking for things that benefit both of you and the relationship overall. That you should definitely listen to. Compatibility just depends on what she grew up with. So say, for example, she grew up really stable. She got into one toxic relationship that she didn't fully understand. It was a nightmare. And then she went back to stable. Chances are it might work. In that case, it will work. But if it's a case of she grew up really chaotic, went through a lot of chaotic situations, then used a stable man as a form of just getting a house and kids, she'll go back to chaos. So if you want to know if she's settling or not settling, you have to ask yourself, what is she used to? And whatever she's used to is probably what she'll revert back to after a long period of time. But if she grew up with a lot of chaos and then she's with a stable guy, she might be able to style it out for 1 to 5, 10 years. But unless she does the inner work, there'll be a part of her that wants to self-sabotage. So if she did come from chaos, make sure she's working on that. And you've tried to stabilize her, make sure she's still working on the inner conflicts.
Otherwise, it'll just never work because it'll always revert. And this is a
It will always revert. It's a childhood thing. But one thing I have to say is if a woman is chaotic and you're dating a chaotic woman, then you as a man also have a problem. Because if a relationship has one person that's crazy, that means there's 2 crazy people. One of them might be more sensationalized with their reactions, but the other one must have an unmet need of trying to save somebody or trying to be the hero or trying to be the nice person that shows her different lifestyle. There's a part of you that thinks by saving her, she'll attach to you. So usually both people are coming together through low self-esteem. One expresses it through chaos and the other one expresses it through trying to put out all her fires. And both of them are going to at some point fall apart.
So when you talk about saving, can we talk about the hero complex in relationships? You know, when let's say we see great women with sometimes loser men or vice versa. Why does something like that happen where you want to fix the person or whatever, be the hero?
Usually comes from when one parent depended on you as a child. So what usually happens is they come from a broken home and they in their mind might have labeled one parent as the abuser and one parent as the victim, or had to be there emotionally for one parent because one parent may have been, may have had some depression or anxiety or anything, where they had to make excuses for one parent. So it boils down to that. And one thing I notice is men who, or even women, when they have a dad that cheats, most people will say he's a narcissist, he's awful, he's that. But when people have a mother that cheats, somehow they turn her into the victim. Somehow they still see the mum as a victim, even when she's the one that broke the home. And they'll say, well, dad was away a lot, or, but this happened and, it wasn't really her fault, because we have an instinct to protect our mothers. We all do. Yeah. It's human nature. So when we have a mother that has a template that may have been chaotic, or a template that may have been promiscuous, and I notice this a lot in men, they'll deny it. They'll deny it, and somehow blame their father. So when those men go into the dating world, they'll look for promiscuous, chaotic women and deny it, because that's what they're used to doing. They're used to denying it. So when I have clients that have been cheated on quite a lot, I always ask, why are your mum and dad together? And they'll usually say no. And I'll say, why was that? Always they'll blame the dad 9 times out of 10. But then when we dig into mum's behavior, we realize mum was the one that was having the affair, or mum was the one that was coming home late, or mum was the one that was going on holiday with the neighbor. And what had happened is the child had made excuses, and they never saw what a true wife looked like. Because mum never cooked or cleaned or looked after dad or was loyal to dad, they never saw that. So when they meet a woman who hasn't got any of those wifely traits, they see that as quite normal. Whereas a man that grew up with a wife as a mother, they know, they're like, oh, this woman's, she doesn't even come home on time, or she's always out with her friends. That's not normal. So I would say that hero complex comes from over-identifying as your mother's son and as your mother's protector, and more so than anything, as a denier of mother's poor behavior.
Wow. This is almost like a session for me.
But do you realize how generic it is? Many times I say something and millions of people will say, that's me, that's my story. It's because human beings are all the same. And people, the people that are not ready to heal and the really bitter people will say, oh, you can't generalize. But people who are genuinely aware and educated, they realize human beings are just as predictable as the ingredients of a cake. You put in certain ingredients, you get a certain cake. Same thing, certain ingredients in your childhood, a stable home, loving parents, it leads to quite secure outcomes. Other ingredients, where a promiscuous mother or an abusive father or an alcoholic parent, or it leads to different kind of outcomes. We instead of denying it, let's think, okay, how do we fix this? Is really the mentality we need to have.
And what I've also learned from the hero complex, that I'm sure I have, is that over time is that we aren't the hero. Like, what makes us in our mind think that we're the hero? That's a superiority complex in and of itself, isn't it?
It's an insecurity complex, because what would have happened is that you only received love, or could only maintain the illusion of love, when you did everything for someone, or when you just were as helpful as possible. And that's what you thought was the exchange. Because here's the thing, when you have a victim parent and you do everything for them, the reward is usually they love you. Yeah, they give you love. When you just agree with a parent, a lot of mums and dads, what happens is they find that child that just agrees with them or just helps them. They give them lots of love. So it's really effective in the house to be like that. It's totally ineffective in the real world. It's ineffective to constantly make excuses for somebody, constantly take their side and receive love from them. Instead, what you'll receive from them is a narcissistic taking from you. So it's constructive in the home, but it's not constructive outside of the home. And I say this as a mother, as my mom has 5 kids. And, I would always be the one that would rebel against what she's saying. And I'd say, no, that's wrong. And then other siblings might just agree with everything she was saying. I just saw a natural attachment to whoever agreed with her. Now, in the real world, if I just agree with people and everything they're saying, they don't attach to you back, because they want to hear your real opinion. So it's only constructive in your household to be like that, not in the real world.
Wow. And so how would you maybe fix that even? Like, if you recognize, let's say someone's listening to this and they recognize now what their internal struggles are, how would you go around changing that behavior?
Remember that you are deserving of love without having to fix somebody's life in order to get it. Because firstly, you can't fix anybody's life. And secondly, you probably deserve it with or without fixing it. Most people are good people. Most people just want to love and be loved. Most people are kind enough to deserve love. If you feel like you have to really fix somebody's entire life and make their whole world different to get that love, ask yourself, is that fair on you? Is that fair? Is that what you think you deserve? Chances are that's not what you deserve. And then you start to think, okay, next time I meet someone that requires me to fix every element of their life, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is say, I'm going to help you help yourself, but I can't fix your problems. So if you want to take some time, I go for walks, or if you want to go to therapy, you do that. But me doing everything for you is not going to help you. Instead, it's going to make you worse. I'm just going to enable you. So our true love is you fix your problems, I fix my problems, but we are holding each other's hand in the process. But me trying to jump in and fix all your problems is an insecurity in me. I believe that's the only way you'll attach to me. And actually, I'm deserving of love without having to earn it in that way.
It's incredible. Wow. This is like one of our best sessions. This is not even a...
we should film every session.
Yeah, literally. Wow. Okay. I'm just processing that for myself.
Of course, we'll obviously catch up on our own time. And
yeah. Wow, that's okay. Well, there's a few questions that my friend, who's a female, is a fan of yours, and she wanted me to ask you.
Because sometimes I'm just answering male questions because I'm usually with the male host. But if you have any feminine questions, that would be great.
Absolutely, yeah. No, she has a whole bunch. Her first one was, what are the things that women can do to help men stay empowered in their masculine?
It's easy. Appreciation. That's all they actually want. Men are so... They actually are so easy to kind of please. They might be multi-million. Look, I'm sorry if I talk a lot about successful men. I live in Dubai. Praise be to God. Everybody here is super successful. So I've got a skewed vision. And so I'm not talking about the average man who doesn't bring anything to the table. But I'm talking about men who genuinely run a few companies, will buy you a house and a car and, give you an allowance. With those men, the only thing they actually ask for in return is appreciation. And what appreciation usually looks like is be loyal to me when I'm not home, like be loyal to me. That's one form of appreciation. Another form of appreciation is show me love. And what that looks like is know when I might be hungry, know when I might be tired, and predict that and have a solution to it. Know when that I just don't need to be yelled at. Anything you want to say, just say it nicely. I'll promise you I'll do it. But yelling at me and insulting me is not going to work. So it's just these little things that show appreciation to them. They don't need you to buy them a Rolex. They don't need you to literally go and buy them, pay their rent. They don't, if they're successful, I'm saying. If they're a bum, they might need that. But if they're successful, they don't need that. All they need is you're loyal to me behind my back. You are affectionate to me. Like you always show me kisses and hugs outside of sexual intimacy. They really value affection. Some will say, no, I don't like it. But deep down, they like to know that you want to be affectionate to them. So lots of affection, lots of verbal, like telling them that they're handsome and they're this and that, reminding them that they're something, and just being proud of them. Now, these are things that would cost you nothing as a woman. It would cost you nothing, but it would do a lot for a man because they don't hear it. They can't tell you the last time somebody complimented them. They can't tell you the last time somebody made them a coffee without them having to. They can't tell you the last time that happened. Whereas with girls, we compliment each other every day. We'll grab each other food as we're getting it. We think about each other because that's what female friendships are usually looking like. Men don't get that with each other. So if they can find a woman that shows them a lot of appreciation, they really do. They really do value that.
Okay.
That's my opinion. What do you think, Nia?
Yeah, I mean, guys are really easy. In my opinion, I just think, appreciation is the number one thing, especially if a guy is providing everything in the sense of financially or whatever she might need, taking care of everything in that sense. Yeah, I mean, just super easy. Just keep the peace in the home. Any issue that you have, communicate, and don't constantly berate or
limit the criticisms. Limit the criticisms.
Well, even if you have complaints, of course, bring them up by all means. I'm not one of those guys that says, hey, shut your mouth and just do what I say because I pay the bills. I think that's horrible. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I do believe that if anything needs to be brought up in the household, it can be done so with proper communication, but with love. Yeah. Even if you are annoyed.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and
Perfect.
yeah, I think, acts of kindness and stuff like that, like bringing food and this and that, I think, that's,
It helps.
yeah, it helps.
Mhm.
Another one of our questions is, how can you encourage a man to be vulnerable? Goes back to, I guess, my earlier experience.
The key thing to encouraging him to be vulnerable is asking curious questions, always asking, specific questions, not just how are you? So it's like, how's that situation with your boss? Did you manage to speak to him about it? You ask those types of questions. The second thing is, if you really want vulnerability out of this, and this is something I need to practice myself, I'm saying this, but you don't then later in an argument bring up what they told you in a negative way. The thing is, what happens with men, if they've told you something in a vulnerable state and then you later bring it up or you later insult them for it, they will never do it again. They will never do it again. They need to know that their secret's safe with you. And what they mean by that is not that you won't tell anybody, that's almost a given. It's that you won't tell him that secret back to him in a negative way. So if you really want to create vulnerabilities, firstly, you are also vulnerable. You're open with them. You ask them curious questions, but you don't use their vulnerabilities against them.
Like throwing it in his face.
Yeah.
Right.
At any point.
Right. I see. So what would you say it takes to restore trust in a relationship when it's been broken from, the woman's point of view, but you can also go from the man's later too?
That's right. Yeah. Here's the thing: how we rebuild trust is that in order to trust our partner, we need to believe that they see and hear us pretty much all the time. So let's say, for example, it doesn't have to be let's exchange pins on our phones and let's say passwords. That's not really what trust. How you rebuild trust. How you rebuild trust is I know that my partner, if I'm stressed at work, they can see the stress on my face. They will ask me, "Are you okay?" If I'm sad about something, they ask me, "What's wrong?" Every emotion I feel, they also feel it. So when they see that I'm tired, they don't say, "Oh, here you go, complaining again." They'll say, "Oh, are you okay? Like, what's going on?" If they see I'm hungry, they won't say, "Oh, girl, you know where the fridge is." They'll say, "What do you want?" Like when you have a partner that your emotions become their emotions, you start to trust that behind your back, they bear you in mind. But when you have a partner where you can be tired, sad, hungry, stressed, whatever, and they don't show any reaction, of course you're going to think they're not going to remember you when you're not there. And of course they're going to behave in disloyal ways. So it's more about on a daily basis, remembering each other's emotions and almost experiencing each other's emotions as they're one person.
How can you cultivate a deep relationship without becoming codependent?
What happens with deep relationships that are not codependent is they have their own self-identity outside of the relationship. So what I mean by that is one person might be, for example, you're a YouTube sensation. So you might have your job and you're doing all of these things and you're doing great. And she might be, maybe she's into, I don't know, maybe she's fashion designer or does some beauty, whatever it is. She's doing that all day, whatever it is. She's got something that makes her feel good outside of the relationship. And you've got something that makes you feel valuable outside of the relationship. But then when you come home, you share your experiences together and your wins are her wins and her wins are your wins. You're super proud of each other, super excited to hear about it, but you're separate when you do it. So you're really proud of each other, really share, really intimate about it, but you still have something completely outside of the relationship that makes you feel good. Now, what codependency is outside of your relationship, you have no identity. Outside of your relationship, you don't have friends that you can talk to. Outside of your relationship, you don't have a job that you're passionate about. Outside of your relationship, you don't have anything. So then what happens is you want your partner home all the time, or you want your partner with you all the time, and you become super codependent. The key to that is just having a way of enjoying your life with or without your partner, but you want to share those nice experiences with your partner when you come home.
I see. Okay. And the final question I have, and it's going to be a Star Wars question. So
okay, go ahead. I've never seen Star Wars in my life.
No, it relates to what we're so once Disney took over Star Wars, they started to change the whole infrastructure around and really, kind of dog the men and focus on the women a lot, in the sense where there wasn't much training and this and that. There's a new director for one of the Star Wars movies, and she says it's about time that a woman come in and shape the Star Wars movies and galaxy. And it's causing a huge uproar on the internet. So many people are saying this is ridiculous. We've had women in Star Wars galaxy before. And other people are saying, well, people's egos that are having a problem with this are very fragile and their masculinity is fragile. Yeah. What's your overall consensus when a female director wants to come in and reshape something and say, it's plant that flag that, hey, I'm a woman and hear me roar. Here is my way of making this sort of franchise, which is already established, now something that's feminine dominant or female dominant, whatever it might be, instead of just a good story.
Yeah, I think what happens particularly in Western cultures where women have it so easy, but they pretend they're not. What happens with women who generally have it quite easy, they enjoy victimhood because that's the only way that they can feel part of other people's struggle. What makes human beings feel alive is when they're a bit struggling, when they're going through something, where they've gone through a bit of trauma, they've gone through something, it makes them feel alive. What's happened with women in the Western world particularly is because there is no real oppression, but they want to be a victim so bad because victimhood is just a way of kind of shortcutting sympathy. Everyone it's just shortcut entitlement. You get what you want without having to earn it because you just happen to be a victim. So what happens is they want to start finding places where they can be a victim and then transform it so that they can become a hero. So what they'll do is say, oh, we need more women in this particular sport. Nobody watches them. Nobody wants women in there, but they'll just stamp their authority so they can be a local hero. Then we need more women in Star Wars. No, we don't. Women don't even watch Star Wars. They don't even care about it. It's a man's little thing. Let them have it. But they want to be like, oh, there's such a deprivation. We got to be in it so they can be a mini hero. When you don't have anything outside of your gender as a way of being proud of yourself, you use your gender as a shortcut for entitlement and heroic stances. So I would just say, unfortunately, it is the norm in Western cultures to kind of over-identify with your gender and then over-identify with victimhood. It's a way of getting a shortcut to being a hero. And as a result, it's just there to design. And also what it does is keeps the power in the hands of the women. And whenever you redirect power entirely to women, just like if it was entirely to men, it creates an unhealthy society. If the power is totally in men's hands, it would be unhealthy. If it's totally in women's hands, it's also unhealthy. But what we're doing is, I remember in an environment, I did a talk and it was a mainly Gen Z, a very young generation. I couldn't believe how feminine the men were. Everybody looked androgynous. I couldn't believe, and I just you would just take the normal 18-year-old boy would have been considered as a really feminine man years and years ago. They would have seen him as like super feminine, or they would have just assumed he's a homosexual. In this day and age, that's just how the men are come. So they've lost the masculinity. Yeah, and so what's happening is the culture is creating the very men women will not desire in the future. By doing this, you're going to create a bunch of men that you will no longer be sexually attracted to. And as a result, you'll be more miserable in the long run.
Well, Sadia, thank you for your time.
Thank
where can
you.
Everyone find you? On the Instagram, I guess, hopefully.
I know. I got hacked on my Instagram, unfortunately. But in TikTok and YouTube, it's at Sadia Psychology. I also offer one-to-ones. And I have a Patreon, which contains all my exclusive content where I go into more detail. And you can message me anytime on that as well. So I stay interactive. So my Patreon and one-to-ones are always available.
I'm going to put all those links in the description and everyone can find them. And I look forward to talking to you again in our session.
Thank you so much for your time. Okay, take care.
Okay.
Bye.